Tales of the Valiant has been out now for about... The alpha version of Tales of the Valiant has been out now for about a week or so. And if you know me, you know I've been digging into the PDF, finding out whether I like it or not. So I'm now ready to take 5 minutes of your time to talk about Tales of the Valiant and the main differences between 5th edition and earlier versions of Tales of the Valiant. For this video, I'm going to assume you played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or at least know Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, because Tales of the Valiant heavily relies upon the rules set by Wizards of the Coast in 2014. As a matter of fact, it is my opinion that Tales of the Valiant is basically Dungeons & Dragons on steroids. And that is immediately obvious when you do the first thing that you always do when you create a new character, and that's determine the ability scores. Now, the difference here is that the ability scores for Tales of the Valiant are a little bit higher. Now, you still can roll for your ability scores, you can do the point-buy thing or take a standard array. But when you roll for your ability scores, you still roll 46, take out the lowest, and write down those numbers. Once you have your numbers, you can add 2 to one score of your choice and 1 to another score of your choice. It is the same with point-buy, where you get 32 points to spent among any ability scores instead of the 27 for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Also, these standard arrays are a little bit higher, but the main difference and the main balance here is that your ability scores are a little bit higher than in 5th edition, but for Tales of the Valiant, this is where you get your extra ability scores. You don't get extra ability scores from your race, your background, or your class. By the way, quick note, the alpha release is full of handy little sidebars and pieces of text to help you convert your 5e monsters, characters, adventures, whatever, to Tales of the Valiant. Then we take the word race, open the garbage bin, and throw it in, because now we talk about lineage and heritage. Lineage is basically the blood that flows in you from your ancestors. If you take the dwarven lineage, you look like a dwarf, you have this dwarven posture and everything. But then you can also take the elven lineage, making you look more like an elf. Then you choose a heritage, and your heritage, you can choose a heritage that fits your lineage in a very stereotypical way. For example, you can be a dwarven lineage with a heritage where you were in a mountain for your entire life and you've been a locksmith or whatever, all that dwarven stuff. But you can also take a dwarf who has the heritage of being found by humans, and maybe you have been traveling the world and you've been raised by those humans, giving you kind of like an ability to create your own race, sub-race, multi-thing, where you represent one race, but you've been brought up by another race or another society, making a cocktail, which is a very cool way of doing it. And both the lineages and the heritages give you unique abilities that will make your character make sense. And before I am absolutely shit on, yes, I know Tales of the Valiant is not the first RPG to do it this way. I'm merely pointing it out. And then we move into the equipment section, where all of the armor and the weapons are in the general sense exactly the same as 5th edition, with one big difference. For the weapons, every weapon in the game gets an extra weapon option, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. And weapon options are a way to use your weapon outside of just dishing out some damage. And some of the weapon options, reading out loud here, is bash, pinning shot, hamstring, pull, trip, piercing shot, and ricochet shot. In order to use a weapon option, you need to be proficient with the weapon, Then we move into spell circles and spell rings, and outside of the fact that they're called circles and rings, there isn't much difference with 5th edition here. The rings are basically the spell level, and the circle is basically the type of spell. The one big difference here is that now they don't have a spell list for every class separately. Instead, they have a divine spell list, they have an arcane spell list, and it is my guess that in further versions of the Tales of the Valiant, they will also have something like, I don't know, a primal spell list or a musical spell list and stuff like that. Basically, having something that took up 10 pages in a book, now taking up 2 pages in a book. And then, last but not least, there is the optional rule we all know isn't optional, which is Doom Points, which is an additional resource for the Game Master when they are manning a creature against their players. And basically, you can spend 1 Doom Point in order to give a creature advantage on an attack roll, give a PC disadvantage on a save, or once per encounter refresh, recharge, or otherwise gain in 1 additional use of a limited use feature such as the Dragon's Breath weapon, a legendary creature's legendary resistance, or a spell and a major spell casting. And that's it. Tales of the Valiant in less than 5 minutes.